What up, y'all? This is another episode of B.O.B.O Talks / Def Talks, brought to you by DefJam Recordings, best of both offices. We're here, man. My man J.O., he looked like he ready to go. Game face.
I'm ready, brother. Brother, we got we got Michael K. Williams on the line. That's all I know. Like,
well, listen, you about to
wait. I'm a fan of The Wire, first and foremost. Now, I'm gonna just get that out the way first. So salute, King. You know what I mean?
Yo, Mike, I got something to admit to you before we even start, man. I ain't never seen not one episode of The Wire, ever. You know why? I'm gonna tell you why. Because by the time I got hip to it, I was too broke to have HBO, any of that shit. So by the time I got hip to it, it was so many episodes in. I was like, you know what? Fuck it, man. It's too late. I just listen to the stories that y'all tell me about it. You know what I mean? But now
the beauty of it all is, one, I'm quite sure you can find a little time in your schedule and these times to watch it. And two, it's there, bro. It ain't going nowhere. It's right there, bro.
I think it's part of HBO's stream for free, so everybody could watch it.
Listen, now. I got the fucking Fire Stick, so I'm good, baby.
My man.
So Mozzie, no excuses from now until next week before the episode comes out. We need you to watch it, okay?
Yeah, I'm a binge watch shit. We also have some worthy constituents with you. We got Dominic and Dana, so please introduce yourselves as well.
Go ahead, Dom.
Thanks, Dana. I appreciate that. I was going to say ladies first. Thanks for having me. My name is Dominic DuPont, and I'm the director of programs for Making Kids Win, and have the honor and the privilege of being the nephew of Michael K. Williams and working with my amazing colleague on the line, also Dana. So thanks for having me.
And I'm Dana Racklin. I'm the executive director and founder of NYC Together, which is a local nonprofit that's really focused on elevating the strengths of young people and the community to come up with non-traditional answers or solutions to public safety issues. So really reimagining what public safety can look like in our communities to lessen the need for traditional law enforcement. And in doing so, shifting the culture around policing and how we use police officers in our communities.
So Dana, real quick, so as we jump right into it, could you elaborate further on public safety and what that is, especially for Black and Brown and those living in the communities that are dealing with these issues?
Sure. So the way that we think about public safety is it's an ecosystem, right? And it's not only on the police department. In fact, they should be playing a much more minor role in creating public safety. We recognize public safety as being a good social infrastructure. So making sure we have equity in our communities, so open space, fair and affordable housing, good schools with access to technology and teachers. All of those things contribute to increasing public safety, economic opportunities, all of that. I think as of last year, the median household income in a community like Brownsville for a family of 4 was something around $23,000. So that's not, so when you think about public safety, we have to think about the entire community and what that looks like. So when you ask a young person that I work with, how do you increase public safety in your community? I'll never forget one of the kids saying, he said this to Police Commissioner O'Neill at the time. He said, that's easy. Pay Black and Brown women the same amount of money as you pay everybody else, because then they don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs and they could be home with their kids, making sure their kids are doing the right thing. And that was his answer on how to make his community safer. And that is a really smart answer, for especially coming from a 16-year-old. He understood that his mom had to work 2 or 3 times as hard, make with considerably less than their white male peers, and that prevented them from being in the house, which often could lead to other situations. So we think of public safety holistically, and we think of it as being achieved by investing in social infrastructure and elevating informal social control. So things like crisis management or violence interrupters responding to things instead of police. They're from the community. So they can say with more authority and respect what is acceptable or unacceptable in a community. So it's a multitude of things, but we as a community have to start rethinking public safety and how it's achieved.
Now,
and also too, if I can add to that, right? You know, so and if I can just speak to the last part what she spoke about, excuse me, with crisis management. You know, I had a police officer tell me at a dinner, we would have Dana would organize these dinners to call saloons, and we would have youth from the community that have been touched by the system, high-ranking police officers, chiefs, lieutenants on that level, and then brothers like us from the community, you know, that want to do the right thing or be of service in our community with our youth, and this white officer, high-ranking, white shirt, he said that he basically said he acknowledged the fact that we are over-policed. We call 911 for everything. And then the sad part about it is, to the other part what Dana was talking about, there's not enough services in our community. We call the police when our uncle got too drunk and run around with his drawers off. We call the police when our son is not taking his meds and he's off his meds and he's having a mental health issue. We call the police when those kids smoking weed in the hallway and maybe making a little bit too much noise. These are not things. We call the police right now for firecrackers. These are not the things that we should be calling police for our children. There should be other services and other entities in our community that can come and rectify that before it escalates to a police thing, and even within that, being boots on the ground to prevent the gun violence, not dealing with it aftermath, but being there in the mix, having your ear in the street to prevent that shit before it goes down. All of that is reimagining public safety, because the reality of it is these police officers are not trained and equipped to deal with quality of life issues that they are being called to do, which is why things go so wrong when they show up. They lack the training and the tactic to deal with these type of issues, especially in our community, because we're already so beaten down with other things that are going on, like the things that Dana spoke about. So that's all of that is when we talk about reimagining what public safety looks like for our community.
And just so I can give you an example, just like a real quick example of that is, for when people say defund the NYPD, for example, in Brownsville, there's an organization called Elite Learners. It's run by a wonderful woman. Her name is Kamara Jackson. She's not properly funded. She only has enough funding for 2 days a week for guys to go out and do what's called safe passage, which they go on to the biggest block there, which is Stone and Sutter, and then make sure kids get from school to home okay, right? It's called safe passage. Now, originally, safe passage or safe corridors was designed by Bill Bratton in 1994. Which was how we started the school to prison pipeline. We put police there and we were yanking kids out of the community as these super predator types. That was a school to prison pipeline. The community has reimagined safe passage and they're putting community members there. 13-year-olds get into stupid fights over girls or whatever. Now put community members there, but she only has funding for 2 days a week and for that one block. So imagine investing into Elite Learners, to Kamara Jackson, to hire more people from the community, to be there to do safe passage. That's what we mean about increasing public safety by creating a public safety ecosystem.
Infrastructure, and the infrastructure that you spoke of.
And that's what we mean when we say defund the police. We're saying reallocate funds that were going traditionally to things that didn't need police presence to the community.
And you just took the question, you read my mind. I was going to tell you to expand more on the misconception of what defund the police even means, because people don't understand it. And of course, the other side is using that as a way to, put blame on the community. And
by no means do we mean
stop the police.
By no means do we when we say defund the police, do I mean at least we don't need police, or get rid of disband the entire police department.
I don't think any of us do. None of us mean that.
but you know, the rhetoric, the narrative is being put out there, you know, because we're speaking, you know, I don't know why, but there's a narrative that's being put out there that kind of like right now, you know, what I'm hearing is, see, you're going around talking about that bail reform and defund police. This is what's happening. There's an uptick in shootings in the community, in the city. They're trying to throw that narrative, that salt in the water.
Spin it.
So yeah, so we using our voice and our platform to be like, no. Don't shift the focus, because we've already discovered that adding more police in our community does not. This shit was still going down. So there's got to be another way. And just because we're saying what we're saying is not give it to police, just give us a budget. You know, okay, so a sister we just met with in Queens, man, Erica Ford out there in Queens. Shout out to Life
Erica
Camp.
Ford. Yep.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
She's been doing wonderful work for the last 10, 15 plus years. She's
more
amazing.
like 30 years.
30.
For real. 30.
Well, 15 that I've known
okay.
her.
Well, we're aligned with her now. We support her in all her endeavors, and we have service with her and for her. Organizations like what she's doing in Queens, we would like to see more of that throughout the city. You know, so when we talk about defund police, what we're really saying is, if we put funds behind an organization like Life Camp in Queens, what that does is two things. One is it gives someone like Erica and Dana the proper resources to do what they do, which means hiring staff, because these women, they're not a one-man show. They need a team, and they need an army, right? So and they be able to pay these people. So they need finances. That's where this budget goes to. We've already things like this. What this budget goes to. Another thing is we've all acknowledged the fact that formerly incarcerated people, it's like almost, when they got that X on their back, that felony on their back, it's next to almost impossible for them to get employment opportunities.
Yes.
This is a way to do that. But 90% of the men and women that come out of the system want to do the right thing, which is my nephew here, who did almost 21 years of his young adult life incarcerated, and had it not been for his the way he conducted himself while he was in there, he would still be in there right now, right, waiting for a death sentence with corona, which is another topic. But he was not, what's the word? What's not Clemens, but
commutation.
He had a commutation from Governor Cuomo. So you got brothers like my nephew here, and a lot of other brothers, man, that have been through it, and on the other side, and want to use their skills, their training of surviving that system as a tool to talk to the next generation that's coming up under us. And it's a great way to create jobs for brothers and sisters. So this is all of this is what we say when we say defund. We're talking about $1 billion out of $6 billion.
Right.
So I have a question. So in regards to from a budgetary standpoint, right? Like New York City itself, 5 boroughs, what would it cost to, from a budgetary standpoint, to actually implement and execute these programs properly? What's a fair allocation towards each vertical and business vertical that you're looking to focus on in the community? Because I know that's the biggest thing, right? Bottom line is money, right? Money moves everything and helps build what we need to build. So, cream. I mean, we need cream for sure. So what would you say from a roundabout number, and how do you forecast those allocations of those funds? Because that's pivotal, especially for your planning and to go raise that capital.
Dana, you up?
Yeah, so, I don't think that we could put an exact number on it. I think because I'm definitely not an economist or I don't have the overview of the entire budget by any means. But
Talk about NYC together.
But I think that there's two components here. One is, it's not that the money doesn't exist. The money is there. There's no equity in the money. So a good example of that is I went to a town hall. I believe it was Bed-Stuy or Brownsville. I don't remember which it was. And the mayor gets up and he puffs out his chest, so excited to tell the people he's going to invest $7 million in renovating the park. And everybody was like, oh my God, yes, this is amazing. The next week or the next month, he had the same town hall in Williamsburg, and he announces that he's buying a piece of property for $120 million before renovations to make it a park. So we're not actually talking about we're talking about the money exists, but how is the money being spent, and is there equity in that spending, right? And so we know that that does not exist. We know that the city does not receive funds zip code by zip code in the same way. We know it's disproportionately spent in other communities that don't look like you guys, right? That more reflect me. So one thing that we're looking for is equity. The other thing is that there's tons of government waste, not just in the NYPD. You're talking about in the DOE, in every city agency. But as of recently, if you looked at the DOE, they went and they spent a gazillion $1 million, I forget the exact number now, on the laptop.
What is DOE?
Department of Education.
Okay.
For the laptops for the kids, right? As soon as I heard schools was shutting down, I was not messing with DOE to buy laptops for my kids, because I knew that those laptops were never showing up. My kids were never going to get access to those laptops. So not only did they spend 3, 4, 5 times the amount to buy loaner laptops for the kids, but some of the kids didn't even receive the laptops till after school was over. There's still kids receiving laptops now. So you're talking about government contracts, how they're given out, who can bid for those contracts, all of the waste and inflation around those contracts, right? If you're going to build a school, if your school needs to have their bathroom fixed, only the school construction authority could do that. And there's an inflation on that pricing. So you're not just talking about how much money, you're saying how is the money spent? Who is getting those contracts? You know, are they Black-owned businesses or vendors? What is the relationship, right? What's the nepotism that goes into that kind of stuff? So I think that I can't give you an exact number. I wish I was better at this stuff, but I will tell you this. I was able to raise the money through, actually, hip hop has been so good to us. So there's multiple layers to this. So one thing is I'm good friends with the Hot 97 morning show people, Laura, Shawnee, all those, Ebro, right? So they have a platform. Right, Peter's come out. He did a DJ competition to raise money. He competed against the Brooklyn North Chief. The Chief kind of washed him. I don't know. But you know, they're able to hold elected officials accountable, right? Because people come on that show for a platform, and they're educated and they're smart and they're using their platform correctly by challenging elected officials. They also highlight organizations doing good work, like they've broadcasted from the LifeCam trauma vehicle before. So doing things like that. Johnny Shipes over at Cinematic helped us raise $10,000. So we were able to buy all of our kids' laptops and get them ready to go. And we got them virtual tutors. My kids did better this semester during COVID than they've ever done academically. Shawnee Culture and I, we host a monthly social justice dinner. We called them the Saloons to begin with. Now they're called We Build the Block. And we bring in various hip hop artists from Styles P to Talib Kweli to engage with young people and high ranking officials, not in some like kiki type, oh, we're gonna go play basketball, but more like Talib was like, I wanna talk about white supremacy. So, okay, now we're gonna talk about white supremacy, you know? And we've been I work with the music industry in a lot of different ways, but one thing that we're working on now is this like hip hop heals type of thing. You know, a lot of the gun violence that we see pre-COVID was centered around music videos. And they're all beefing with each other on these music videos to get clicks so that they could get the attention of people to sign them. But you talk to somebody like Johnny, he's like, I'm not signing this kid because I don't need this headache, right? Like, this is a lot. And so we're trying to put together, I know Erica Ford is working on it now with Bun B and a few others. And we're looping in our folks on our side to have these really respectable people like Mano come out. They know the community, they know the little kids, to be like, this ain't it, right? Like, we have to stop shooting. And I think that their voices are really powerful, and their voices are also connected to money, right? If they could draw the connection to me signing you, means I can't deal with, you know, all the stuff that comes with your gang beefs, right? That's a bad investment for me. That could mean something, and that could have power. But also because these guys are credible messengers, right? They have the same dreams and passion. They came up a lot of the same ways. They're able to give that experience, support, and guidance. You know, Tekashi 6ix9ine was one of my students. He was
shit.
In 2013, he was one of my kids, and he was, if you watched his court hearing, he was like, oh, I was in the Greenpoint Youth Court. That was my program. I was running that program.
Right.
And Danny's really smart, and he understands a lot of, but he also has a lot of trauma and whatnot. And what would it have been for us to wrap our arms around him before it got to the place that it went to with him? And listen, you're not going to be able to help everybody, but we could try.
Right.
We could. So I believe the hip hop community could be a village for kids. Really teach kids. Like, kids are getting deals. Fivio, those Fivio kids.
Oh yeah, Fabio. Yeah, the whole.
Yeah.
Those kids, they getting deals. They didn't even have a bank account set up. Right? Like, how do you teach this? I didn't have a bank account at that age, but how do you teach those skills, right? How do you nurture and support those kids and then teach them how to grow? Like, A.Boogie is a great example of that. He started an empire with all of his friends. He became an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So really trying to invest in these young kids. That's how I would love to see. I think hip hop they're doing wonderful at using their platform. Amazing. And they're doing wonderful at being supportive around criminal justice reform, like Meek Mill and whatnot, and using their voices in that way, raising money. But the last thing that I'll say, and then I'll stop rambling, which I think is super
You're not rambling. You're dropping gems.
Like, this, I think, is so super important. I remember a couple of days ago, there was some, like, beef between Trey Songz and Meek Mill, because Trey was like, why didn't you donate? Or I don't remember what it was, but he wanted Meek to donate or do something in Philly. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about.
Nah.
I think that's great that people hold each other accountable in their networks. But we also know, like, iHeartRadio is white executives. The music industry is made up of a lot of white people who sign the checks to artists. And are we going to the system, right? The system that's in place. Are we managing up? And when we talk about reparations or redistribution of wealth and accumulating wealth and money, we need to be going to people that sign checks, right? So Trey Songz wants to talk to Meek about it. I'm not going to police what anybody says to anybody, but can we keep that same energy to go to the people that, you know, operate MSG, where you perform a concert at, or the vendors there, and like Budweiser or whatever else, and say, yo, where's your checks? Right? What are you doing to feed the community?
Yeah.
It can't just be that the talent is doing stuff. It can't just be that. Now, while they're still messing around with the city budget, Michael and Lana Parrilla, who's an actress in LA, helped to raise.
Born and raised in the Lower East Side of New York City. Shout out to my Boricuas.
They helped to raise $85,000 so that we can hire young people for summer youth employment. So we know that it doesn't actually take a lot of money to do this good work. I could do great work with some of the contracts that have been given out, and I never, I don't go after city or state money because I don't want to be beholden to them and to this nonsense. If my kids need glasses, I'm buying my kids glasses. A grant's not going to tell me.
Are you a teacher, Dana?
No, I'm not a teacher. I have people on my staff though. Like, so for the summertime, we have a education student who developed a racial.
Pardon me, this is where she gets a little modest. But pardon me, I'm going to intervene here. Dana, she does this. She has no day job. This is 24 hours, 7 days a week. She lives, eats, and breathes NYC together. She primarily works out of the hood in Brownsville, in those projects. She's on the front lines. I've seen her. Is she a teacher? Yes, she is. I've seen her check homework while she and I were in between meetings like what you and I are doing right now. But they call her, send me your homework. I'm going to be checking this assignment.
The real
She
MVP.
sent one of my mentees the computers. I tell you, she's on the front line. And then she works very closely with NYPD, or at least she was up until these past few weeks ago, for the last 5 years. And she's been building the relationship and showing the police this is how you deal with the youth from this community, and it has been working. So when I tell you she's front line, I've seen her. We be in those precincts almost every day before Corona. She is, and I've gone with her. If she's not there, she's with her kids. When she says her kids, she's talking about the youth that she's got. She just literally went around all the fucked up schools in New York City and said, "Give me all your fucked up kids." No, I don't mean to use that language, but that's what she did. And I'm not telling you what I heard. I've seen this. This is what she does. So she's not going to tell you like that, but she's a frontline, essential person in our community that works every day. Her phone is never off 24 hours a day for the kids, and particularly out of Brownsville, in our community. That's what she does.
What it seems like is going on with NYC Together is that you are doing what all the people who are protesting now, and people even for years been screaming at the top of their lungs, that we need systemic change. And rather than crying out "fuck the police," which is a sentiment that is warranted, but we say that because a systemic change needs to happen. And that's what I'm seeing happening with NYC Together, to the point where, when you spoke about the woman who has the group of people in the neighborhood who are helping out, that seems like militia tactics, and it's because, we need the trained specialists, we need the funding, and these are the systemic changes that I think you guys have hit the nail on the head with. You see what I'm saying? So it's very important.
We try to create systems and protocols that allow this work to happen. So like an example would be our youth referral protocol. When a young person, let's say a kid robs another kid, right? The first person that finds out about that robbery, other than the victim of that, is usually the police officer that arrives. So what happens? The police officer makes contact with that kid. The kid gets processed. They're chained to a wall for however long, and then they go home and they have to wait for a court date. Why not use that crisis moment and turn it into a turning point for that young person and connect them to services right at that moment? And so we're saying, no, cops shouldn't be educators and social workers and counselors, but they can be that critical connection piece between a young person in crisis and an organization doing wonderful work, like
serve and protect, which is what they keep saying they do.
And truthfully, if we truly invested in communities, far fewer kids would be getting arrested to begin with. If cops weren't in school, yada, 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 it goes on. But if we are going to have, there are going to be kids that get arrested, no matter what. That happens. Kids get, now what does that moment look like? How can you reimagine that moment to turn it into a positive? And also we know the kids that get arrested for robbery, a high percentage of those kids later, when you look at kids that get arrested for guns, I think it's something 60-something%. I don't remember the numbers right now. COVID has my brain fried, but 60-something% of those kids who get arrested for shooting a firearm were also arrested for robberies. So we know that a robbery is a gateway into another crime that's more lethal. So why not make that a turning point? So we try to put those mechanisms in place at the moment that crisis happens to avoid future crisis. And so we've worked with the NYPD really cooperatively to try to say, look, this serves your best interest too. It doesn't make sense for you to have a kid that robs 18 people, right? That's not good for you either when you go to Comstat. So we're trying to show how this benefits everybody.
Now, do you think that this is a problem I always peeped out? Do you think this adds to the systemic problem? I noticed that a lot of the police, I can speak for NYC because I'm here, they're not from here. They're not from the neighborhood they're supposedly serving and protecting. I see that as a problem because there's really no vested interest. It's just, let me punch in the clock, let me do what I gotta do, let me go back to my suburb and blah, blah, blah.
But you'd be surprised. There's a lot more cops in New York City working in New York than you know. I've been exposed to several of them. I mean, there are still that situation that you talk about. That's not a problem. However, there's a lot of good officers. I mean, good brothers that are from, like, Lieutenant Edwin Raymond, who put his his life on the line, his career on the line by blowing the whistle on what he saw was a quota, a type of system that was put in play to, where officers were told to come into our community, rattle our cage, give us tickets and summonses so they could fill a quota for arrests at the end of the month. And I know he's born right there from Crown Heights. There's a few other officers. I'm not going to call their names right now, but I know for a fact I've done ride-alongs. There's a lot, and these are black men.
So, sorry to cut you off, Mike. I think
No. Go ahead.
it's like a means of education for your audience. So there's 40,000 members in the department, and I felt a lot like Mike, like where I was working with these guys who are from Brownsville, who are from LES, and I was like, yo, wow, I'm working with the best cops I have. Like they're so vested in everything, and the conflict that I had internally was, how do you scale that, right? And how do you make that reverberate throughout the department? So what you're hitting on is the systemic issue. The problem being that in 2014, there were over 3,000 black men who made it up to the point of getting an investigator to join the NYPD. So they passed the physical, all the other tests, they get an investigator. Once they go through investigations, they go into the academy. Of the 3,000 plus guys, black men, who made it up to the investigator stage, only 30 something of them went on to become NYPD, right? Made it out of that investigator phase. And that's not because most of them, 99% of them, were not eligible, but it's because who was doing the recruitment, who was doing the investigating, right? And do they have a systemic racism problem internally that would prevent more people from your community that look like you from actually joining? So really addressing how they do targeted recruitment, and then after recruitment happens, who are the investigators? What are they looking for? Are we sure that they're practicing anti-racist policies internally, right? Are they not biased internally so that people can move through the system to get hired? And so I think what you said is really smart. It's systemic, right? It's how do you shift the entire system, and then you'll see more people that look like you, right? If we don't create those barriers. Now, part of defund, which Jumaane has said publicly, is Jumaane Williams, he wants a hiring freeze. And so I don't know what that's going to look like. I will say a lot of the cadets and the new recruits are black and brown. And I've seen a lot of women, young girls, like it's been really nice. But again, it's a systemic problem that has plagued the department since inception.
I have a question for Dominic. So in regards to, you served 20 years, you know what I'm saying, and bless his soul, and just, and your mind to be able to come back home and be able to work with NYC together. I think the one thing that we don't see is rehabilitation, right? For brothers and sisters that come out from incarceration. So, I know that you're still going through the rehabilitation mentally, you know what I mean, to adapt to 21st century here in New York City and, the move. But what are some of your thoughts about rehabilitation and some of your vision that you would like to see done with NYC together, knowing that you're in the forefront and can speak to men and women that were incarcerated that come home and they need the opportunities, like you said earlier.
Thank you.
And speak on your nickname Tyson, by the way.
Oh, you heard about that? You heard about that, bro?
I can take a hit.
Man. So first off, thank you for that question. So one, it's reentry it's a process, right? And that is intertwined. It's interconnected with this concept about rehabilitation and what that means. And how do we find effective ways to make a successful transition back into the community? And what does that look like? And the point that Michael often makes is, what are we returning back to? So to be successful, there's some basic things that we need, just, common basic stuff that is not even a question in some of the communities that Dana talked about earlier. And what she often says is that we're not asking for anything special. We just want what every other ethnic group has, right? So maybe a little education, maybe that'll help. Maybe a community that's not identified as a food desert or an oasis. How about, people were coming back to the community and wanting to use the skills that they have sharpened while on the inside as they serve decades and decades of time. I know plenty of people that have completed college and have been successful, but because they are formerly incarcerated and they can't connect with a felony-friendly agency, and what that translates into is that your challenges with the criminal justice system is not listed as an X against you. That experience is something that you can use as a catalyst to help people in the human services field.
Yes.
And what we encourage people to do as they are looking for employment and trying to better themselves as they transition back into the community is just an opportunity to take those skills and to use them out here in the community. And often there are huge challenges with that. And despite some of the progress that we have made in policy with regard to, there was some legislation that was
ban the box.
Ban the box. Thanks, Dana. Specifically with regard to banning the box and other things that were helpful. There's still this stigma that comes with someone who's been formerly incarcerated. So all of that is connected to that word that you mentioned when you initially opened up with your question, rehabilitation. And that process is extremely hard, particularly if you don't have support from family members and friends. And what I'm thankful for is that I do have that support, but it is still challenging, right? Because there are things that I am not able to shed quickly like that, because I was in prison all those years. I spent more time in prison than I did in my life in the community. So I constantly work to deal with that and to help people deal with that process, but it's all interconnected with the work that we're doing with NYC Together, with Making Kids Win. It's interconnected with, the platforms that we use to raise this conversation and this awareness about some of the challenges that people have with just trying to make sure that we help people. So this social justice platform that we are on right now, trying to make sure that people understand why it's so important to fund amazing organizations like NYC Together and Life Camp and Making Kids Win. We are partnering, we are bringing our energy together and in one in sync way to make sure that we could shift this culture. And that is what we're doing and how it's connected to rehabilitation and how it's connected to some of the challenges that I have, even with all the support. There are things that I still have to work through. There are things that so imagine what people who don't have those benefits are going through. And I'll close out by saying this right now. And me and Michael and Dana was having a conversation about it yesterday when we were leaving our meeting at Life Camp, that, I would still be in prison right now dealing with the challenges of COVID. And, of course, there's this big conversation about what's happening in nursing homes, but the aftermath of what's happening in our city jails and our prison system nationwide, if we were to have a conversation about that, it would be hard for any civil person to look themselves in the mirror. It's disgusting. Mm-hmm. So we have to work better at rehabilitation. We have to work better at funding these programs so that we can effectively make some strides in a direction that's consistent with our vision and our purpose for the organizations that we work with.
Now, Dominic, my bad, Joe. You want to go ahead?
No, I was going to say, because I'm very involved with prison rehabilitation, and with Prison in the Wild. Shout out to Rex Duval, who's very active in Rikers and Woodbourne. So I'm assuming do you know Rex Duval?
He knows everybody, bro. This dude knows everybody.
Absolutely.
So what's crazy is that when Rex was explaining it to me, he was like, listen, when you're dealing with rehabilitation, you're not just dealing with the prisoner, you're dealing with the family that's outside. So when you're dealing with the family also needs money to, one, pay their bills, right, to survive, to just to live, right, one. Yeah, two, absolutely. They have to send commissary money to that individual, their father, their son, whoever, their daughter that's in jail, and then that's a layer too. So they're dealing with stress on top of stress on top of stress, which causes more systematic issues mentally and for them to have to go back in or whatever it might be. But I just feel like there's so many layers that we should be addressing and approaching. And I think with NYC Together, you're on the forefront in being able to do so, right? In the sense of being able to rehabilitate the kids now mentally from what's happening in the neighborhood and what they've dealt with systemically. And then two, also helping their families or building that bridge so that, hey, we're willing to help you out. We're willing to teach you. We're willing to help build these programs, because families of that caliber that are dealing with kids or their family members that are incarcerated, they need those resources that you're providing for them more than anything, so that they can get a better job. They can learn how to use a computer. They can learn about eating cleaner, more cost effective, right? There's so many layers to it.
Metro cards,
Metro card, just the basic needs that outside of welfare.
But that also goes into like the systems thing and the money thing. So school had asked me to come in to do work with their 5th grade class, because the 5th grade boys were getting into fights and cops were getting called. So we had come in, and I was nervous about doing it because I don't really like to expose little kids in that way. But we did it, and we had one little boy who had a hard time staying in his seat, acting, he was rambunctious. And him and the teacher there just were like this. And he threw the kid out at one point. And I don't throw nobody out of my program. I don't care what you do. Nobody's getting kicked out. We're going to figure it out. Everybody stays. And so I go outside and I sit with him and I'm like, what's up? Like, you love coming to program. What's wrong? His dad had just come home from prison after 7 years, and he's in the 5th grade. So we start talking. He starts bawling. And I'm like, we get through it. We do this whole thing. And I'm like, how do you feel? He's like, well, now I'm really angry. I'm like, why are you angry now? We just let everything out. He said, because I cried. And that's weak. And I'm like, no. So we go through a whole thing about boys crying. We do a lesson on it the week after. But my point is to say this. That young man was in that school since kindergarten. I met him in 5th grade in the last 3 months of school, and nobody in his school knew that his father was incarcerated and was coming home. And nobody in the school thought that his behaviors were connected to something that was happening at home. So it's not really about money, right? Like, the teacher is there, their staff is there, the building is there. It's about, how do you shift the way people think about their student? How do we shift the way people that are in positions of power, all adults in young people's lives are in positions of power? And what do they do with the power that they hold to assist those young people? Right? When that's less about money, and that's much more about how do we as individuals, as stakeholders, as power holders operate. Same thing with guys that are in prison. The resistance, the political resistance to not let people out of prison that were aging, that their sentences were coming up, that has nothing to do with money. And that has everything to do with power and control, and the people who have that power and control using it irresponsibly or using it as a way to maintain white supremacy.
But doesn't it have to do with money as well? Because you have organizations like the CCA.
Yeah. So it has to put money on the other end, meaning people make money by keeping people in prison. But I mean,
that's what the school to prison pipeline's about.
Right. It has nothing to do with money, like, oh, we don't have enough money to ask this young kid why he's having a hard time in school, he can't sit in his seat, right? Like that's a fully funded school. We know that the DOE allots a certain amount of money per kid, and maybe we shouldn't have school safety. Maybe we should have peace officers and counselors in those schools. But besides the point, we do know that there's a teacher in that room. And is that teacher asking those critical questions? And does that teacher care to ask those critical questions? Right. That's a real question. And same thing with all these electeds who are, the mess with keeping people in prison that didn't need to be there.
Right. And now, you guys have an educational piece and a thing that you encapsulated and explained a lot of this. I know, Dominic, you're in it. It's a documentary. It was called Raising the System. And Michael, you actually where the guy who was narrating the whole thing. So can you guys expand more on that and talk about that documentary and how you use that to educate not only the NYPD but the public that needs to know more? Because I learned some statistics when I watched it that I didn't know about.
That documentary, or what you're actually watching, is it pretty much made itself. You're watching me take a journey around the country and find out what is the school to prison pipeline, how does it work, and who does it affect. I had been privileged to sit at the White House when I've been invited by Obama and 30 other people. We sat in a room to discuss criminal justice. When I left there, a lot of emotions. I was happy to have been invited to such a prestigious table, but I was also like, what the fuck do they want with me? Like, really, like, I know nothing. What does my voice really matter? I'm just a dude on TV, right? So I just looked at my life and I was like, yeah, Mike, you may have never been to prison, but you've been visiting prison since you've been 17 years old. And you were a long way from 17 years old. I'm still, Corona wasn't there. I'd still be making visits to a good friend and brother, Jimmy Roseman, right? So I took these emotions and these questions to the producers at Viceland, where I did Black Market with. And I was like, well, what is up with this? How come my friends and family end up with this in prison? Like, what does this mean? What is this criminal justice thing? What does this mean? And they asked me, how old was your friends and family when they first got touched by the system? And I told them all their age. It was Dominic, my cousin Niven, who's in the doc, one of my other brothers, Daryl, from my neighborhood, my brother Perry, and Felicia.
And how old were the average ages of all these people that you?
They were all minors.
So,
they were all teenagers.
And it goes back to one thing you guys said in that documentary. It was like 38 to 40% of youth that, correct me if I'm wrong, that are minors that go into prison are bound to come back. Am I correct?
Absolutely. The recidivism rate is through the roof.
And 100%, before we did raise the age in New York City, it was like 100% of the 16, 17-year-olds that went to Rikers went back in.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
And remember, this Governor Cuomo, everybody's hero right now, Governor Cuomo fought raise the age for years. That did not just come up. Raise the age was put out 11 years ago. It was a long time ago with Joe Lentil, and Governor Cuomo fought that, and he did not want to do raise the age 2 years ago when he finally did it. And think about all the kids that would be in right now.
His pops was whack too.
But so basically, when we had this conversation, this is a white man, and he sat across his table and very cavalierly said, when I told him the ages of all my friends and family, he says, "Oh, that sounds like the school to prison pipeline." And that was the first time I had heard those words used in a sentence, and it fucked me up. Something awful. It gutted me. I didn't understand. Like, when I sat down, and I really just, it swept me off my feet, bro. I was like, how do you say those words? What do you mean? There's a system that is called the school to prison pipeline. And it messed me up like something awful. So I went on this journey, and that's what the doc is. But, after the HBO cameras rolled off, then their rollout was done and the lights and cameras went off, I looked at my nephew. I said, "Yo, Dom, you ready?" He said, "Let's go, And we started taking that into the community to screen ourselves. In fact, I think our very first one was in Red Hook Project in the community center, right? So so it was I had a relationship with a cop in New York City. He helped me in a situation, and we kept in contact. And I said, "Yo, bro, if you ever need me, I'm there." And he called. He said, "Bro, as a matter of fact, I do a podcast on my downtime, and I would love for you to come let me interview you." On the third interview, Dana just happened to be there, and we met. And us three, we meshed immediately. And what she did was she upgraded the level of what we were doing, and we started going in the community and screening it with a panel, right? A diverse panel of law enforcement, youth, people from the community, and then even more importantly than the panel, we filled the room with a bunch of police officers that needed to see this, and youth who needed they needed the validation and the room to speak to these police officers. And what the main, out of all the many things that I learned on that journey, the main thing, criminalizing normal adolescent behavior, equipped but crippled by trauma, failed systematic days of the community, lack of quality food, quality health care, all of that on top of, the broken family, the addiction, the no help, the addicted parent, all of that feeds an already fragile mind. And then that same child is expected to act accordingly and go to school and get an education. It's a setup for disaster.
But with organizations like NYC Together, it's the micro engagement is the bloodline, is the artery of the shit.
Well, I think that's also about local politics too.
Another thing, yeah.
Local people come out for the president, but are less likely to vote in local politics.
Absolutely.
Likely to be on their community boards. Like, for a great example, do you know that where do you live? If you don't.
Manhattan.
You live in Manhattan. Okay, so whatever precinct you live in, once a month, their commander holds a meeting called a community council meeting, and you can go there and challenge the commander on issues that you're seeing in the community with the police or around public safety that you want them to address if you feel like it's not being addressed. But we have to participate in those meetings. You know who goes to those meetings? Old ladies that go to the meeting every single month and are willing to sit through it.
Right.
And they're the ones that sit on the community council board, so they get the one-on-one time with the police commander.
Please let people know how they can reach out to you, to the organization as a whole, and how they can contribute.
Sure. So if you want, I'm on Instagram. It's at Dana_Rachlin, RACHLIN, or my NYC Together is at NYCTogether.org. Mike is at BKBMG, Brooklyn Boy Makes Good, at Instagram. I'm sure you'll tag also on all of this. Dom DuPont is his. So there, you could click on our links to donate if you want. Really engage.
Is there a site? Is there an NYC Together site?
Yeah, it's NYCTogether.org.
Okay.
And really, like, I'm never usually the person in front of the camera or doing any of the talking. Michael usually does all of it.
You are now, because there's technical difficulties.
I know, and I don't want to get blasted on the internet for anything.
No, you won't.
I love everybody is so engaged right now, and everybody, I believe that the industry, especially like the folks that have been using their platforms, everybody's doing the best that they can. This is exhausting. Mm-hmm. It's never ending. The weight is so heavy. And I'm a white woman, middle-class woman saying that, white middle-class woman saying that. So I can't imagine how others feel. And so I'm just grateful to be in this space and share space with you guys.
Listen, thank you. Thank you so much, Dana. Shout out to Dominic, shout out to Michael K. Williams. I know they had a little bit technical difficulties toward the end, but it's all good. Thank you for everything. And you've educated us. Please, everybody, check out nyctogether.org. And
make sure they check out the doc too.
Yeah,
and Raising the System, which you could stream live on YouTube, and also find out when your community council meeting is and when your community board meeting is.
Yes.
Every month.
I'm going to do that.
Register to vote. Always register to vote and vote in every single election.
Right. That community board thing I'm going to get on that right away.
Mozzie's going to be there with bells and whistles on.
But listen, on behalf of DefJam Records, Best of Both Offices, B.O.B.O Talks, Def Talks, I'm your boy Mozzie. Thank you for joining us.
And this is J.O. Segara, and we appreciate y'all time.
Salute.